headline is Governor Ivey, just a little while ago, less than an hour ago, has finally called a special session of the Alabama legislature for Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock to redraw these unconstitutional districts forced upon the state of Alabama. Let's review. I'm going to tell you, it's good to feel sometimes like you get a win. And in my mind, I'm not taking credit for her being pushed into this, but I will say this. Sometimes in our business, and I'm talking about my brethren that do these things in towns and other opinion makers around the state that had a similar take, sometimes you do get to push back on government when it's being lazy or it's not being responsive. And that's what happened here. I think there was tremendous heat on the governor after putting out a ridiculous statement hours after the Supreme Court ruling, and they showed they were completely unprepared in that office. And now they played catch up today and sort of tried to moonwalk their way back into believing this was the right decision all along. So I'm going to read you the statement. I'm going to tell you about the proclamation. But just to further expand on that, so the ruling from the Supreme Court, again, a ruling a lot of people had anticipated. Political observers had a clue that if Alito was going to write this ruling, it was going to be landmark, and we were going to restore the Voting Rights Act to its original intent. And I've got more to say about that here in just a little bit too. So it appeared no one in the governor's office was prepared. I can say this, a few days before that, I was privy to some information that maps were being studied and drawn, plans were in place. The legislative leaders, while they have let us down as well in the past, they were ready to go with a court ruling. But the governor surprised everyone by succumbing to pressure from, I believe, within her office to put out a statement on Monday afternoon. I got on the air at 2 o'clock. We went through the ruling. I was banging on the governor. Where's the call? I was asking the AG, what are y'all doing? Nobody had an answer. This is the TikTok on it. And so then the governor's office put out this statement saying, well, we're just not in a position to do this at this time because we have another pending case. And a person with a third grade understanding of how landmark decisions work would have known it made the previous case moot and it needed to be addressed and addressed quickly. And they needed to, the fault I have with the governor's office is putting out that statement and trying to demur or punt this whole issue. Not even saying, I will be working with the attorney general to determine our options at this point. She just shut it down and caught hell beginning 30 seconds after I read that statement on the air. I was just fit to be tied, maybe overdoing it a little bit, probably a little mean about it, and then spent a lot of time the next day doing the same thing. And finally, the heat started to build. The governor was embarrassed nationwide. It just looked foolish, because the headline got spun into the governor of Alabama refuses to call the legislature. And this is not, we're not the only people with this issue. Georgia's still holding out. South Carolina's holding out. But it's ridiculous to think we would move forward with an election or those other two states that have unconstitutional districts in them. You can't certify an election that has districts that are already been determined to be unconstitutionally drawn. But yet some states will try because governors like Kemp and Kay Ivey and others are just lazy sometimes. So, and I'm not giving the governor any slack here because even the way they backed into this, they had no choice. All hell was breaking loose on the governor's office. And good. The reason I'm telling you that is not to take credit. It's to thank the audience for your input and being persistent. Thank the people online that communicated your thoughts. I don't think anybody was too vicious toward the governor, but they heard from us. They heard from the regular people that are fed up with this stuff, and they're fed up with the Republican Party that doesn't throw a punch. That's the thing that has always been Trump's appeal to people that are considered nowadays MAGA or whatnot, is that he's a brawler. He's not just a fighter. This dude will brawl with these folks. He'll take a punch and he'll give two. And that's what we've waited on since Reagan. Reagan was smoother about it, but Reagan knew what he was about. He was more of a policy guy and a disciplinarian. Trump's completely opposite in personality and style, but he's being effective because he's pushing. And he pushed hard enough to get a lot of these things going along. The institutions that the Democrat Party built to rig elections for their favor are coming apart. Hallelujah. Now let's just talk about the issue for a second. segregate. I always try to think when I'm out cutting the grass and doing my chores in the morning and working on things. I think over and over and over about how would I put this on the air? How would I say it so it makes more sense to people? And what I've determined on this issue of racially based districts, while I understand this general argument that minorities should be represented in Congress, of course, you are going to be represented in Congress. Black people can vote all over this country. That's what the Voting Rights Act ensured, that you couldn't be denied based on your race. But what it sought to remedy, can we do a history lesson real quick? It was to end legal segregation in this country. Okay? We had legalized segregation in this country, and one of those segregation items was voting rights. All right, can we all agree to that? No matter what side you are on this issue, this country legally segregated segregated people into groups, and some people had rights and some people didn't have rights, and that was wrong. The courts proved that. Congress passed this act to try to make up for that. So what did the act do? It was seeking to end the institution of color preferences in this country. It was seeking to follow the 14th Amendment, which clearly has always said you've got to have equal protection under the law. That means all of us. That means all of us. And you white folk, that means you too. No matter what they've been saying to you for the last 20 years, it's all of us. We're colorblind. That's the only way it's ever going to work. And so here's my statement. This is the simplest statement I can give you on this issue. You're welcome to share it with whomever, because I believe that if you can boil things down into simplicity, you can make a lot more sense out of things. Instead of trying to sound smart and overcomplicating things, you can make things more simple. Racially drawn districts, in Alabama or anywhere else, but racially drawn districts are segregation. Hello. Did y'all catch that? They're segregation. They are segregating people by race. They are sorting us out by the color of our skin. And that's the opposite of the Voting Rights Act. It meant to end all that stuff. It meant to end water fountains and black balconies and back of the bus. And in particular to voting, it meant to end any preference for white folks or black folks when it comes to voting. But the Democrats twisted that on its head. They are counting on black voters voting as a block altogether for them blindly, assuming that they're really on their side, and that has failed the black population in this country. Now maybe we can get to something where these candidates have to listen to all of us. Welcome in. We should all be pulling together based on where we live and where we're from in our district, and not people running just on one issue. It's just, or voting for people just on one thing, because that thing isn't working. It isn't helping. In the practical world, it isn't helping. So it's high time all that ended. The court said that on, Tuesday or Wednesday? The ruling came down Wednesday. And now we're moving forward with that. You can't move forward in an election after a decision like that, giving clarity. And no matter what the left says, no matter what Hakeem Jeffries and those losers say, this isn't gutting anybody's civil rights. It's standing up for civil rights. Civil rights mean you don't discriminate. Race-based preferences are discrimination. What does discrimination mean? Where does the word come from? A lot of people use it as a code to mean, because of the civil rights era in this country and the abuse up to the 1960s, a lot of people take that word just to mean when black people are discriminated against. It does not mean that at all. It means segregation means sorting things out according to type. When you do your laundry, you segregate your clothes. You segregate your lights and your darks and your whites and the colors and the styles and the heat setting. You segregate your clothes. We segregate things all the time. Sometimes it's very necessary to sort things out and put things together that belong together. But when it comes to race, what was argued through all the civil rights marches, what was argued in the courts, what has been the principle of a fair nation, is we don't look at those things. The scales of justice that represent our legal system, she wears a blindfold, and she's holding up two scales to weigh the truth without being influenced by things like somebody's color or where they're from or how old they are, and all these things that have been weaponized yes, weaponized in this country. And they went so far as to take sexuality and throw that in the mix. And not just sexuality, but other things like gender, which still makes no sense. Throw that in the mix and segregate us by those identities. And so that's had a cultural impact, that's had an economic impact on people, and it's not given us any progress. There is zero progress when we do that to each other. None. Anytime you divide people according to anything, and in this case, we're talking about dividing by race. In other cases, you're dividing by other things. You're dividing. That's division. And anybody that wants to bring this country down wants to use division and segregation. The Democrat Party are a party of segregationists. It's not just voting. They were doing it to us through our workplaces. Asian and white workers and managers have been discriminated against through segregation from the DEI programs for the last 10 or 15 years, and all that's ending too. You need to earn it. What's funny to me is I'm watching all these scenes on my TV screen of the communists today all over this country, including whole school districts. By the way, if you can get your kids out of the government schools, see if you can do it, because a lot of this stuff ain't good. These are just obedience factories. They are out doing their little May Day protest. This extends all the way back to the Soviet Union, the whole concept of May Day, even beyond that, actually. But so they're out on May the 1st, having protests. A bunch of these idiots tried to chain themselves to the doors at Wall Street this afternoon. So what do they represent? The same thing, the death of the country. They don't adhere to the constitutional principles of fairness and equal protection. They want to steal stuff from other people. Every one of these people, all of these people are thieves. These people are too lazy or incompetent to provide for themselves, so they demand that other people who work for what they have give them some of what they've worked for. They're demanding the labor of other people. They're demanding the things that are acquired and saved and scraped and paid for by others. They're demanding it through the force of the government or any kind of force they can muster. They're thieves. And so they're laying in the streets and they're holding up signs and they're yelling in bullhorns, and they let their little mushhead kids out of school to run around in the streets. Kids just want a day out of school. These kids can't read. Hey, let me repeat that. These kids cannot read. There's learning proficiency test scores out for the city of Chicago today where they let a lot of kids out of school. They're at 24%. Two-thirds of these, three-fourths of these dumbasses cannot read, and they're out protesting. And because they cannot read, and because the schools have failed us to this degree, now they, instead of going and learning and earning and working and meriting your position and your pay and what you have in life, they just teach kids you can steal it. You declare socialism or communism or another government form that takes from people based on envy. And really, it's not just envy, it's your own freaking laziness and unwillingness to go out and work and do what other people have done to secure themselves. It's an age-old tale. It's been going on for decades, over 100 years in Western countries and even Eastern countries. And it always fails, and it'll fail again. But that's where we are now in society, where these indoctrination factories have put these idiots out there. It's a divisive tool, just like segregation was divisive in the 1960s. And that's why Kay Ivey today had to call for this session. The court has ruled we're not going to go forward for years under the auspices of flawed rulings from the past, that these, speaking of lazy, that these people on her staff, I don't for 2 seconds believe that Kay Ivey sat there and came up with that idea that they would just punt on this process on her own. She was guided to do this by people that don't have the interest of the MAGA folks or any people that are legitimate Republicans. They don't have their interest at heart. They're just coasting their jobs. They're all lining up new employment. It's an insidious industry. It really is, where self-gain is more important than what the people want. But every now and then, the people get to raise hell. And we did for 48 hours until they were finally forced to call this session. So good on the Attorney General for signing on to the Secretary state's complaint yesterday late in the show. We reported that to you. And then Kay Ivey had to follow up today with the call for the session. They start at 4. They can get this done in a matter of 3 days, 3 working days. It'll be done by the end of the week. My biggest concern is that I believe they need to formally pause the current House and any other district races that are drawn by district that are under this guys. That's got to be fixed. And so to do that and to do it timely and give people time to qualify in the new districts, they need to suspend the current election in that portion. We can go ahead with the statewide races and the Senate races and all that. But all that needs to be looked at as well. And I think that keeps us from running the clock too close to it being too late for people to be able to vote. And even in a case like Georgia, I saw an argument today where they were saying, Georgia voters have already started voting. Can't stop now. Yes, you can, because they voted on an election that's now moot. You just stop the voting and everybody votes again. That's just because what they're voting on is an illegitimate election. So Georgia's got to consider this. South Carolina's got to consider this. Tennessee's on the ball. Louisiana's on the ball. Mississippi's on the ball. Florida's already done it. The country's moving forward. And thank God we'll go back to, hopefully, just fair districts that are drawn for where people live, regardless of what you look like. And then we'll all go to the polls and vote on that. And then we'll see who wins. And if you're a candidate, maybe you got to get off leaning on the race issue to survive and have some ideas. I don't know. Call me kooky and old-fashioned, but maybe we want to hear what you think about jobs and the economy. Something that might sound functional. Yeah, we'll vote for you. All right, man, it's going to be a fun Friday. Rain on the way. We got a soaker coming in tonight. We'll talk about that in a minute, and I'll read you the governor's statement right after this. Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Stay tuned. 226, Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Here we go again. Michelson Laser Vision bringing you the show tonight. Dr. Mark and Dr. Jennifer. By now, you know their stories if you've listened to the show for any amount of time. Father-daughter team. She grew up around her dad being this legendary laser surgeon and being a pioneer and being around her father. And I've told the story before. I was in there. I saw a picture of Jennifer when she was probably 12, 13, 14, just a kid in a little lab coat standing with her dad. I said, "Did you always want to do this?" She goes, "My whole life." She never thought twice about it. So for years now, she's been doing these surgeries with her father and carrying on the Michelson name. Again, a legendary practice that brought the first LASIK machine to Alabama and began doing the procedures. And it's only improved every single time, year after year, new generations, new technology, better results. And I had it 7 years ago, and it's amazing. I haven't had one single complication. I'm still 2015, and it's improved so much since then with laser guided sort of surgical systems. It's not really a robot. I don't totally understand it, but the laser helps figure out precise settings so that they can really get very detailed things fixed on your cornea. And it's amazing to be able to see like this. So if you're in glasses or contacts, do yourself a favor, at least explore a visit so that you can see if you're eligible and learn about it. That's all you have to do. You can change your mind or decide later. But I think if you're like me, it's so encouraging to know how it works and to just get it done and get glasses and contacts out of your life. MichelsonLaserVision.com. So here's Kay Ivey's statement. I don't have to read the actual proclamation that called for the session, but they put their spin out about it this morning and said, following the successful 2020 census, Alabama maintained our representation in Congress, and I called a special session to redraw our map. Since then, we've been battling federal courts and activist groups who think they know Alabama better than Alabama. Earlier this week, however, the Supreme Court issued a positive decision in the Louisiana versus Calais case, which I said was encouraging for our own pending litigation. I also acknowledge that Alabama's redistricting battle is not over. She's trying to go back and look for the things in that initial statement that seem on track, but she punted. The state remains under a court order prohibiting the use of new congressional maps until 2030. While we are not yet in position to call a session earlier this week, I said we needed to keep up our fight in the courts, and immediately Attorney General Steve Marshall and emergency motions at the U.S. Supreme Court regarding Alabama's redistricting case. As I said, the following emergency motions have been filed. I remain hopeful that we will receive a favorable outcome. That is 110% spin. She didn't reference any of that in the initial statement. They were done with having a session because of the other case. And now that there's action, instead of just admitting, well, I jumped too soon. Now that we've done this, at least she called the session. But now they're calling the special session because the AG acted. It's a good thing. Everybody's in concert. We just lost a day and some organization and a day of bad publicity. Back in a minute. All right, y'all. Alabama Gold Refinery bringing you the show tonight. I do appreciate Steve and all the help he's given people understand how to get in the game when it comes to gold ownership, gold, silver, platinum, any of these things that could be a tremendous reserve for some of the things that you've saved up. See, the thing about it is you can you can be off the books with this stuff. You can park it where you want to, secure it how you want to. Nobody has to know you have it. That is peace of mind in a meltdown. That's peace of mind with crazy economic conditions. And really, I wouldn't tell anybody. I think years ago, somebody made some gold coins that were called like none of your business coins. I don't know. But go see Steve. He may have some of those. They've got interesting things down there, in different forms, different weight values. You can get started small, but they're always fair in their pricing. And they'll both sell it to you. They'll buy it from you if you've got things you want to sell. Maybe you have some gold, but you want to switch to cash. You want to convert so you can buy something with that stored value. He'll do that with you. Again, fair pricing. They'll even swap. They'll trade. Maybe you have gold. You want to convert that to silver. Maybe you have scrap and you want to convert that to some collectible forms. They'll do that for you. Alabama Gold Refinery, AGR, alabamagoldrefinery.com. All right, real quick on the rain. We do have chances of rain, pretty good, strong chance of rain this evening. Really another soaker that's really helping us with those drought totals. There are not any severe parameters on the rain that's coming through tonight. It's much heavier to our south. Of course, they actually need the rain a whole lot worse south of Birmingham. But just keep an eye on that. It should clear out mid to late morning, and I hope so because I got a T-ball game over in East Alabama I need to go see, and I hope we don't get rained out. But super cool in the temperature this weekend, even possibly down into the 40s by Sunday night or Saturday night, maybe even also Sunday night. So a rare late, much more below average cold weather coming in this weekend. And I'm not a fan. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I've got the heat on here in the studio. I couldn't believe I had to turn the heater back on. I just did it just a little while ago. I was like, okay, I'm old, I'm cold, I'm not doing it. All right, let's go back to the districting for just a minute. The maps. I got to force myself to start saying maps because redistricting is just too many. It's just too big. There have been statements that were put out today from the House and Senate leaders. I think the committee chairs were also part of the statement that was put out by the Secretary of State and the filing yesterday before the Supreme Court. There's a whole lot of spin going on, as usual, over this issue, and it's largely a legal and legislative matter. But nonetheless, you're going to hear people talking about what the prospects are. And let me just entertain some of that stuff so you're not completely misled. For one, there were, as I mentioned on Monday before this ruling came out, there had been some maps drawn according to the wishes of some of the Republicans that have control of the process. And I posted one of those maps after the ruling saying, do this, do it. And it does indeed draw 7 squared up. That's some old country boy terminology, but these are districts that make sense. They're not snaked all around to include people and exclude people. And they make sense for the geographic regions that are drawn. And I said it the other day, to me, one of the tests is you shouldn't need to look at the map to know where the district is. I should be able to describe it to you on the radio. When I say District 2, it ought to be the Dothan area and the Wiregrass. District 1, forever, it's been Mobile, Baldwin, and a couple of little counties around that. Those are our coastal counties. They have a whole different economy down there than they have in Dothan, which is a farm economy, which they have largely in Huntsville, which is space and some farm, of course, but space and research and R&D and high-tech stuff. And so Birmingham's economy is based largely on avoiding crime in downtown Birmingham and moving the hell out and buying your house somewhere else. That's Birmingham's economy. But, yeah, so here we are as we move forward and see how these districts are going to be drawn out. So I just saw it sort of spin, but it's wishful thinking on the part of some people, I believe, at AL.com, because first they reported why KIV can't call this. We're under a court order till 2030. And there were people that were firm in that position. Even Shamari Figures, who benefited from one of these race-based districts, says the court ruling did not call for Alabama to redraw. Well, of course it did. And then you have other people claiming, well, it's at best the Republicans pick up an additional seat because they're likely to go back to their previous map. This is before they forced the Shamari Figures district on us. And that would include keeping Terry Sewell's 7th district. And I think that is a possibility, but I don't think that's what courts are going to order. And I could be wrong because it just doesn't make any legal sense. And here's why. So what you're saying that the landmark ruling, I'm not saying this and you're not saying this, the court said this. The ruling, it is now known as Calais. When we refer to it that way, you'll know what we're talking about. Said it can't draw districts on race. It can't be the sole determining factor. It can, I think it can be a sub-factor, but not the reason you draw a district for political purposes. And that's all this is politics. This isn't about race representation. It's about the Democrat Party. So, how would it be that the 7th district, which has long been drawn for the exact same reasons that we redrew the district that Shamari Figures represents, how could that be a constitutional district? It's not. The 7th district has never been. I remember years ago, I think it was 2010 when we first started the show, there were 4 Republicans running for office over there. They all wanted some airtime. They wanted to get on the show to talk about their campaigns. And I told them all point blank, I was like, you're not going to win. Oh, there's an outside chance. People are fed up with, I can't remember who the Democrat was at the time. But sure enough, they all got beat. They're always going to get beat because this district's drawn for the Democrats. So that doesn't make any sense that they would tell Alabama, okay, fine, we'll let you redraw, but you got to at least keep the 7th district. That's Democrat thinking. That's left-wing spin from whoever put this out at AL.com. What's likely to happen, and I say likely because none of us know, is that if, and by the way, some big ifs in all this stuff, if the court does vacate the previous ruling and the previous maps based on the new decision, which it would be proper, tell them, okay, you're relieved of this whole lawsuit. None of this matters. Go redraw your districts the way you want to. That's what the state, as a sovereign state with the rights to draw based on what Alabama wishes to be drawn through our representative government. We wish to draw districts that are fairer. And there's a process for that. That process has been called. The governor's waiting to do it. I can't imagine they'd put an additional restriction on that process from the Supreme Court level. This is the kind of decision you'll get from a district judge who's playing politics on the bench, which we're seeing all over this country, which is how this case got here in the first place. So in all likelihood, the people that draw the maps in their respective committees starting on Monday are going to produce a map like the one we saw earlier this week because they've already studied it. They've gotten their computer software out. That stuff's fun to play with, by the way. I was privy to using some of this software about 20 years ago when I was helping in some reapportionment cases and just reapportionment district drawing without lawsuits, just trying to figure out where to draw new districts after a census. And you move a line and it moves the numbers, and you move another line and it moves the numbers. And they've been playing with that stuff until they draw these districts the way they are likely to be able to pass them. So that work has been done. And there is no plan that I know of to just sort of maintain the 7th district just to please, left-wing pundits here in the state of Alabama. It's quite the opposite. So we'll see I know what the legislature wants to do. We don't know what the court will permit us to do. And in all likelihood, if it's a clean slate, they're going to permit us just to do whatever because that provision is no longer the governing rule for drawing these districts, and they throw it out, which they did already. And Alabama moves forward fresh with a fresh set of maps. And I can tell you, as I stand before you here today, those maps do not include these unconstitutional districts. They just don't. And there's 4 or 5 versions of them, and none of them have a blue district drawn for the Democrats at all. Why would they do that? I mean, why would they do that? So we're going to see, and we'll see next week, and it should be quite interesting to see all the competitive ideas. The Democrats will be down to trying to obstruct progress in the special session. That's the most they can do. It's like the crazy lady down in Florida that was yelling in the bullhorn and stomping around on the legislative floor. It's not the process. But, you need to tell your folks you put up a fight, so you do that to get on TikTok or whatever. But in the end, these things will pass the way they have been considered for the last several days. But what we're waiting on is clarity from the court. And just to reiterate, I'm glad the governor went ahead and called it. Monday is a sense of urgency. Some were presuming, based on that call, that they might have some inside information that the court's going to be favorable. I don't know that they can count on that. I just think it's prudent to be in position to immediately put your foot on the gas, especially with the primary looming, to get this stuff done sooner rather than later. It could also help with the delay in what would become a whole different primary for these races by just getting it done next week. And what that means is through the weekend, some of these legislative members will probably be kicking these maps back and forth in addition to what we've already seen. And then by Monday, this is my guess, as we wait on the Supreme Court, there'll be other maps that are produced that might be closer to the reality of what they're going to try to shove through. I'll say this, if you're going to get it done through the legislative process in sort of 3 or 3.5 working days next week, beginning Monday, you're going to have general consensus behind the scenes amongst the Republicans as to what you want those maps to look like. You can't be fighting with each other and then have to run over the obstruction of the Democrats at the same time. The Democrats, of course, are wildly outnumbered down in the legislature, so it'll go through like a freight train. When they really want something to go through, they'll shove it through. We've seen them do it with some stuff we did not support as well. So one more note on this whole thing that we'll see next week, and I swear to y'all, I'm going to move on to something else. But this is a big deal. A couple of thoughts. It's not just a big deal for Alabama, it's a big deal for the country. Because this tactic, largely used in the South, because they knew they had a court advantage to be able to bring lawsuits and draw their own districts this way, in a very discriminatory way. This had to be remedied, and it will affect the whole country. We don't know how the midterms are going to turn out. You give the Democrats any advantage to control that House, and everything comes to a grinding halt. All the forward motion we've had on the economy, solving our problems with international deals, all of it becomes a grinding impeachment that'll last 2 years. The country runs into paralysis. So every district counts. Kay Ivey's move to add one more potential, it's not a given, none of these districts are given, but another potential Republican to the right side of things. Now, again, I'm not under any illusion Republicans are going to do anything grand. They really don't do much at all. Their best use nowadays is that they're not Democrats. The Democrats have decided to become a bunch of socialist criminal lovers who want the country invaded, who are for people that are not from this country having a say in this country. That's who they are right now. They'll support murderers and rapists and illegals and thugs walking the streets, and this is just who they are. They'll support transgender people in the girls' bathroom and on their sports teams. They've gone to Kook Town, and that's their party brand now. And here's another thought on that. Why in the world would they be so cocky about their extreme agenda and keep doing it? The logic would tell you, some of y'all are sitting back going, it just doesn't make any sense. People aren't supporting that, and they're not. In majorities, when you poll these issues, they're upside down on the issues. Let me pull the chain on your light bulb real quick and let this go off for you. When you're rigging the system, the issues don't matter. You don't have to actually win hearts and minds. When you're letting people vote through the mail and dump ballots into random boxes, and you've got 150,000 ballots that show up at 4 a.m. after you've stopped an election and faked water leaks, and suddenly you show up with mysterious ballots at 4 a.m. while everybody's asleep and steal an entire presidential election, you don't have to win on the issues. You can run an idiot like Joe Biden, who was walking into curtains, as one of our callers described him in the past, like a Roomba, those little robots that run around your house. You can elect a potato head like that when you can rig it. You can put Kamala Harris up and have a shot when you rig it. When you not only can stuff fake ballots in, vote for people that don't exist, vote on behalf of illegals that shouldn't be here or voting, when you stretch out the voting period for a month prior to the vote, and then want to keep counting after the polls close, you want to keep taking in new ballots after you can do this. When you go around and racially gerrymander, cherry pick districts that would never vote Republican in a million years and can go ahead and put them in your column, no matter who they're running, They could run somebody's pet dog in one of these districts, and if it had a D next to their name, that's going to win. When you've done all that for decades, you don't need to win the issues. You don't have to debate. You don't have to debate at all. You don't even have to really get legitimate votes out. You just run your system. They have attacked the system for 30 to 40 years in this country. And I've sat and watched it. I've been fighting with them over it. I've covered it as a reporter. I talk about it every day on the news, and all that crap's coming unglued. Both the funding of the way they do these things, their legal strategy, the one thing standing in between us and an actually pure, fair election where people show up and they are who they say they are, and they're American citizens trying to determine the fate of their nation on election day and only election day. The thing standing between us and that, we're still needing the SAVE Act. We're still needing Thune to quit being a poon and do his job. And the heat is now on him, especially after this court ruling, because fairness is breaking out all over this country. And these institutions and things that these Democrats have rigged for decades are coming apart on them. And this is the time to put your foot on this thing, put your foot on the gas and go. So we'll see. I don't know what he's going to do. He's a sellout. He's the Kay Ivey of Washington. He's the Governor Kemp of Washington. The Republican Party is replete with John Cornyn's and Bill Cassidy's and these people like this that don't really mean business. As I pointed out at the beginning of the show, Trump's a brawler. He doesn't mind getting bloody. He doesn't mind getting shot at. I guess he minds getting shot at. But he's still doing his thing, and he's still taking it to them, taking the ball, run the damn football. Take the ball and run the damn football. The Republicans are used to just running the clock. Get yourself a majority, run the clock, don't do anything, go home and bitch that you need more money for your campaigns so you can fight these evil people, and hope you can. The only claim to your purpose in being in these offices is that you're not one of the evil people. That's not enough anymore. We got to fight. And that's what we're demanding. And that's what we demanded the last 2 days. We got it out of the governor's office. Let's keep going. It's a big year. 545-9950 is the phone number if you want to get on the show. Ox Foundation Solutions. Next up on the show, OX, oxstrong.com. This is the company that can flat come to your house and fix whatever you're dealing with. If you think it's musty and moldy, damp, don't even mess with damp. Sometimes you can even sense it. You may not even see where the water's coming in, but you know it's become dank and it's got that smell. Get that fixed. It can turn into mold that gets in your walls, that gets in your air conditioner system, then it's in your lungs. I'm not exaggerating. Then, of course, there's the obvious stuff where you see a crack, you've had a shift, there's absolute water on the ground coming in. Let them come fix it. They're the best in the business. They've got huge crews, professionally dressed in nice trucks. They're highly trained. They'll come and handle it for you. oxstrong.com, oxstrong.com. Back here in just a minute. Man, Douglas Cooling and Heating ready to button you up for the summer when it finally comes back. As we're getting closer and closer to actual summer and the heat and the humidity, we got a little taste of it for a while. But yeah, it's to me, it's the humidity in your house as much as the actual temperature that keeps tricking your brain, and you keep cranking your system down because you're not comfortable. You're not comfortable because it's too much humidity, and there's too much humidity because your system ain't running right. So get it fixed, get it tuned up, get it cleaned up. A clean system runs better. It's more efficient. It's more responsive to the thermostat, which means it's actually on the temperature that you set, and it saves you on your power bills. We are running these things up this summer when we start getting into the 90s. Might as well run at peak efficiency. It could save you a huge percentage on your power bills and stretches out the life of the system because it's not working so hard trying to keep you comfortable, especially at night. It is, of course, oxstrong.com and all those guys. Let them come help you. Or, excuse me, Douglas Cooling and Heating. I was just on with Jay today, back and forth. He's being so precise about some windows on a project I'm working on because he wants to know the exact efficiency so that he can gauge the system right. And I like that detail. I like how they do things so thoroughly. When they come to your house too, they'll go around, they'll put the little booties on, walk all over your house, check the registers, make sure all that's good to go too. Douglas Cooling and Heating. Y'all can get them. Of course, the license number over there is 2017181. There we go. I had that memorized for years, and suddenly I blanked on it. Of course, it's calldouglas.com if you want to get them online, calldouglas.com. One other note on the session itself is the way Kay Ivey's trying to structure it, there is some presumption that they would just be working with a reversion back to the map before the lawsuits were filed. But the governor still has latitude to redraw the maps just like the rest of the governors. I don't know what it is or who it is down there that keeps trying to be obstructionist over a cleaner version, but we'll see how that gets sorted over the weekend. The other thing to note is they've started dismantling, I believe it's the old Senate chamber, because, they've built themselves a Taj Mahal of a new state house over across the street. And some of that work is still underway, of course. And they were getting ready to, and now that they were wrapped with the previous session, starting to pull the furniture out and pull some of the electronic systems. So they're having to come up with a plan to get one of the chambers back like it was and find a way for the other chamber to be able to meet. So some of that will have to go on all weekend long to get ready for Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock. All right, we'll take you to the top of the hour, see what else is going on in the world.